My involvement with UNICEF has been for 14 years. The first time I did anything with them was in Thailand, and I was on a tour with Manchester United, and I was asked by UNICEF with 6 other players to go to a women's centre, and that was my first involvement with UNICEF. And then about 6 months after that, I had a letter from Kofi Annan saying, would you like to become one of our ambassadors? And that, without a doubt, was one of my proudest moments outside of my career and in my life, to be honest. You know, to be asked to be an ambassador of an organisation that does so much for so many people, so many children, so many women, so many men around the world. I was very touched by that. So, yeah, my involvement started a long time ago. Sorry, I feel like my involvement did start 14 years ago, and 10 years as an ambassador. So I'm very proud of that, and I take that very seriously.
And you've launched the Seven Fund this year. I'll ask you a bit about that in a moment, but Carol, I'll come to you. As UNICEF, a huge organisation, you have a lot of ambassadors, but David is the first ambassador to have his own fund. What does that say about what he brings to UNICEF?
Well, you know, first of all, I want you to understand that we don't just take anyone to be an ambassador. You know, we were the first organization to ever use celebrity ambassadors, and we get requests pretty frequently from people who would like to be ambassadors. And as I describe it, usually as we date for about a year before we marry. And clearly we look for people who are truly committed to our cause. So this is not just, you know, a PR thing. This has got to be somebody who really, as I describe it, speaks kid and really feels the mission. And David clearly does that. And, you know, his reach is so phenomenal. The announcement of the Seven Fund alone reached over 5 billion people. I mean, it was like this most amazing pickup on it. And also because children look up to him. So when he speaks, it's not only great for public relations, but it is an opportunity for a role model to speak. And I think that is equally important. So we're just thrilled to have him.
So you've been dating David Beckham for nearly 14 years.
Well,
I think we can call that going steady.
You know, okay.
So David, 14 years involvement with UNICEF. This opportunity comes up for you to start the Seven Fund. Tell us what it's all about. What does the Seven Fund mean to you?
Well, the Seven Fund is obviously something that we've been talking about for a while with UNICEF. And obviously, as you all know, or I hope you all know, I retired 2 years ago from a career of 22 years. And I was pretty successful in my career, which I'm very proud about. And my involvement with UNICEF was always something that I was proudest of. So when I came to the end of my career, you know, even during my career, I wanted to do more. But obviously, I had managers that obviously wanted me there every day, so I couldn't do everything I wanted to about going into the field and doing certain things. But I did as much as I could. One of my first involvements was with the tsunami, which was about 2 weeks after I was made ambassador. So that was something that, you know, I was obviously very involved in. So obviously, you know, the Seven Fund is something that I wanted to do more. You know, I understand my position, I understand my role, I understand that over the years, which I'm very proud of, I've become a role model for many children. And I do take that very seriously. So when we started talking about the fund, I said, what can I do more? You know, what is there that I can do more for children around the world? What can I, you know, raise and shine a light on? And we found many things that I could do. And funnily enough, you know, that was something that we really focused on. You know, I have a voice, and I have a voice that a lot of people like to listen to. It might be slightly high-pitched at times, but I do have a voice that people listen to. And we found that out very quickly with my involvement with UNICEF. And I think if that's the only thing that I can achieve with starting this Seven Fund, then that's enough. But I want more. You know, I want to raise as much awareness as I can. I want to raise as much money as I can. I want to do everything possible. You know, at the end of my career, you know, many people say, you know, why are you not just sitting down, relaxing, going on a beach and enjoy yourself? Playing golf here, which we were never allowed to do, by the way. But no, I understand over the years of the success that I've had on the field, that's given me the chance to actually achieve off the field with other things. And this, without doubt, is my main focus. People turn around to me at the end of my career and said, do you want to become a manager? Do you want to become a coach? I have to be passionate about something. I think many of you have seen me play, hopefully, and enjoyed watching me play for my country and the teams that I've played with over the years. And everyone knows how passionate I am about the game and about my job. So I have to be passionate, and I'm passionate about UNICEF, and I'm passionate about helping children. And I realise the opportunity that I have. I have a real opportunity to help children around the world.
And really, I want to underscore what you just said, because, I'm the paid gun to do this. This is not something that David has to do, and he's been doing this for 10 years, and he, instead of saying, great, 10 years, I've done my share, is amplifying it at a point in his life that this is the farthest thing that you have to be doing.
And we come back to the name, the Seven Fund. You must have been inundated with possibilities of of projects and projects to fundraise for. How did you whittle down that shortlist? Obviously, the name Seven helped, but how did you decide what regions, what projects? Because like I said, the list of children that needed help must have been endless.
I think that was part of obviously being, a partner with UNICEF. Being a team member with UNICEF, that's where I had to, I've seen the work that they do, and it's truly incredible. It's selfless work that these people that work for UNICEF on the ground do, not just a couple of hours a day. They are doing this 24 hours a day. They are not sleeping, they are not washing. This is something that they are so focused on, and they just want to help people. So obviously when we started talking about the Seven Fund, it was just a fund at first. So then obviously Seven was something that everyone knows is very important to me. I wore it for Manchester United for years. I wore it for England for years. My daughter's middle name is Seven. So it means a lot to me. And that's when we started to focus on the countries that really do need urgent help, and the children in those countries that really need that urgent help. So that's when I had to ask, UNICEF about their expertise in that area, and we came up with the 7 different countries, 7 different initiatives, and we focused on that. And that's, like you said, that's the difficult part, because we live in a world where there are so many, children in danger of violence, of malnutrition, health issues. There's so many issues around the world, and we really needed to focus on certain things. And I think, like I said, that's where UNICEF's expertise came into this.
Yeah, Carol, talk to us about how you came up with this shortlist.
Sure.
Because, like you said, UNICEF doesn't just go in for the short term, it's there for the long term. This is a bold move, because you have to invest in this project for the long term, as does David.
Absolutely, and UNICEF works yesterday, today, tomorrow in 190 countries and territories around the globe. So identifying the 7 took some conversation and negotiation. In particular, though, what I was struck by was David's desire to shine a spotlight on countries that might not otherwise have a spotlight on them. So he didn't pick, quote, the sexiest places in the world, but instead places that some of you may be challenged to find on the map. And I think that's particularly interesting. In many ways, it's kind of like what George Harrison did for Bangladesh, David is now doing for Burkina Faso. Taking a country that is not every day in the news, but is experiencing horrific child mortality rates, horrific child violence rates, things that are things we don't want to see for our own children, we shouldn't tolerate for any child, and shining the spotlight on them. So the countries are Burkina Faso, Bangladesh, I'm cheating, Swaziland, the Serbia region, Papua New Guinea, Djibouti, and El Salvador.
Well, let's shine a bit more of a light on those areas with a little help from Google Maps in this video. So Google Maps has essentially taken us on a tour of all the work and all the regions you're covering. One of the questions that you must get asked a lot is, how hands-on are you?
Well, I hope by the end of today in this talk, you'll realise how hands-on I actually am. Because obviously, I've had a 14-year relationship with UNICEF, and from day one, I've been very hands-on. I've always wanted to do everything possible. You know, when it came to, obviously, the Seven Fund, we sat down, we talked through every possible country that we could help, every initiative that we could get involved in. And believe me, I'm involved in this full time. You know, this is something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I want to make a change. I want to, you know, it's about leaving a legacy. I've always wanted to be a professional footballer, and I was lucky enough to have a career that I had. Now I want to be able to be successful and help children around the world. You know, I'm sure most of you in here are parents, and you all know what children mean to you. You know, they're our future. It's an obvious statement. They are our future, and when I look at my children, I want to leave a legacy so in 10, 20, 30 years' time, they turn around and say, my dad helped build that, or my dad won that trophy, or my dad helped these children. And that's what I want to do for children around the world. It's why I'm so very hands-on with not just the Seven Fund, but UNICEF and other charities that I've been involved in over the years, because I want to make a difference and I want to be involved 110%. It's what I do. People have seen me on the football pitch and I'm passionate. Now I'm passionate as well off the field with the Seven Fund and with raising awareness around the world for children and the protection of children.
And this is how involved David is. He's not just a fundraiser, an ambassador, PR, marketing as well, sitting here talking about it. But Carol, he is opening doors that you perhaps couldn't ordinarily get through in terms of, I understand you had a bit of a problem getting to the Prime Minister. David Beckham turns up at number 10, knocks on the door, and there's a warm welcome.
Exactly. And I think also just to listen and to hear, having seen the work, you can't help but become that passionate and that engaged. I was watching the video and like thinking about the countries and, taking just one, Bangladesh, the education initiative. In Bangladesh, the majority of children that you meet will introduce themselves by profession. Okay, they will do it the way an adult does. A 5 and 6-year-old, hi, I'm the garbage man in the community, I'm the cook in someone's home, and your heart breaks when you see it. And I've had the opportunity to go to work with those children and to see the circumstances under which they work. And you come away from something like that and you can't help but want to change something, and then to have somebody take the step and actually make that happen is pretty remarkable.
David, in your work with UNICEF, is there one particular child that you've met that you always have in the back of your mind when you're doing this work? Was there one particular child that touched you, and every time you go forward and push your work with UNICEF or the Seven Fund, they're in the back of your mind?
I mean, there isn't one particular, because there's probably 4 or 5 children that I've met in my time with UNICEF that have really kind of got to me, and it's still hard, to talk about it, because I'm pretty an emotional person anyway. I'm sure you saw in my last game when I played.
I'm sure if you shed a tear, a lot of people rush forward with tissues. You'll be okay.
Being part of UNICEF and being an ambassador, it does put you in a situation where there's a good chance that you will get emotional with talking to families, with talking to children. There was a particular family that I met with my last trip, my most recent trip to the Philippines. And I was warned before I actually went into the house, because this was after the typhoon that went on in the Philippines, and it was probably 4 weeks after, so it was very raw still. It was very, there was a lot of heartbreak throughout the island, and it was devastating. So I was warned before I went into the house, this is the story that you're going to hear. So be prepared. I don't think anything can prepare you from a parent's perspective of what has just happened to them. And the parents came in. Well, I met the little girl first. She walked in and very polite, amazing, big smile on her face. Sat down, talked to me. And then the parents came in. And the moment that the mum sat down, tears just were rolling out of her eyes. And then the dad was the one that actually explained, what had actually happened and what they'd been through as a family. And what actually happened the night of the typhoon, they were told to get on top of the roof, get onto the highest point. So they did as a family, 2 little girls, one 8 and one 3. And the mum was holding the 3-year-old and the dad was holding the 8-year-old. And the mum turned around to the dad and said, I can't hold on anymore. Will you take her? So the dad's holding the 2 girls. The dad ends up getting knocked off the top of the roof, still holding one of the little girls. And then he woke up. He was knocked unconscious. He woke up probably 4 or 5 hours after, and he only had one of the little girls with him. They searched for 2 days, and then finally they found he found his little girl. And to hear stories like that, it's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. And like I said, it's hard to not get emotional when you're sat with a family that has gone through such heartbreak. But, to make it worse, the dad was like, let me show you a video of my little girl. So then I'm watching a video with the parents, and the heartbreak that is in the parents' eyes, the heartbreak that they are going to have to go through. But that's just one family. We're talking, I was driving back to the airport, and I noticed on the side of the road there was a small graveyard which seemed to be next to some kind of school. And I said, can I stop? There seemed to be people everywhere. So I walked onto this graveyard, and I spoke to, there was a person there, an elderly man. And I said to him, can you explain? Are you able to explain? And he said, 12 of my family members are in this grave here. And when you look at things like that, it's, I've just listened to one story from one family. There's so many families that have gone through such devastation. And, we're also talking about children that are still dying from diarrhea. My children get diarrhea. They don't die. Sorry to be so graphic, but, it's true. It's true. In our day and age, children are still dying of diarrhea. Why this has gone on today, 17,000 children are dying. And that's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, the next day. Now, we have the opportunity to really make a difference. There are so many influential and powerful people in this room and around the world that can really make a difference. It's easy it would have been easy for me to turn around and say, do you know what, I'm more than happy with doing what I'm doing, being an ambassador and continuing my role. But I've been in the field, I've worked with UNICEF, I've seen the unbelievable work that UNICEF do. And I really want to make a difference. And I know that it's, like I said, it's easy to sit back and say, I'm just one person. I'm not going to be able to help that situation. You can, and that's the difference.
The 17,000 children are all under the age of 5, and they're all dying of causes we already know how to prevent. Not one of them is a death we couldn't have prevented if we'd gotten there in time. And lest you think, though, that it's an insurmountable problem, in the 1980s, that number was over 35,000 children dying every single day of causes we knew how to prevent. And in the ensuing years, while we've halved the number, the world's population has tripled. So theoretically, there could have been over 100,000 children dying every day, and we've brought it down already to 17,000. So in the abstract, that's great, but if you're the mom of one of those 17,000, not so great. And so UNICEF's commitment really is to bring that number to 0, that we will not stop the work we do until that number is 0.
And Carol, 2014 was a particularly bad year globally for children. Explain why that is.
So the United Nations will rank emergencies, and a level 3 emergency is an all hands on deck, flat out, the worst possible emergency. And in my career, I've been in the nonprofit world now for over 30 years, you will have on average 1 or 2 level 3 emergencies every year. This year we've had 5 simultaneous level 3 emergencies. There are more children on the move right now than there were in the post-World War II immediate period. There have been more natural disasters. And unfortunately, each time an emergency happens, we get stretched that much thinner. You know, the UNICEF doesn't stockpile dollars in case of an emergency. You never want to say to a mother, I know your child is starving, but I'm saving these dollars just in case we have an emergency. So each time something happens, it's an and, it's not an or. And this year there's been an and and an and and an and and an and and an and. It's been the worst year for children in record.
But this year, 2015, is being called the Year of Hope. David, there's a chance to make a giant step in getting the welfare of children globally on the agenda of world leaders, and you're going to be doorstepping them and making sure that happens. Explain to us what's going on this year.
Yes, I am. And like we were saying earlier, you know, one of the great things about my success that I've had in my career is that it does open doors. It does open doors for UNICEF, and there has been moments where we've needed to speak to prime ministers or presidents, and thankfully they've been football fans, so or Manchester United fans or Real Madrid fans. So it's probably why I kept hopping from club to club, just
cover all bases.
We hit all bases. But no, you know, obviously in September, you know, like you said, 2014 was one of the most devastating years for the protection of children. But 2015 in September, I'll be heading to New York and hopefully making sure that, you know, with the global leaders, with the power that's going to be in New York at that time, that the protection of children will be on the top of their list. And I think that's important. That's the goal that we want. And we want them to hit their goals, and their goal to be the protection of children.
So what will you be saying to them? I'm quite interested to know what a doorstep by David Beckham is like when you're confronting these world leaders. How does this conversation start?
Well, I'll take a few shirts so I can sign them. Apart from that, you know, I think...
Wait. You'll have to have a selfie with them first. That's
selfie,
generally how it
course.
works now, isn't it?
But it's going to be similar to what I'm doing today. You know, I think I just want to voice my opinion about what I'm doing, what UNICEF are doing, and the great work that has been done over many, many years, and hopefully the great work that's going to be done in the future. Because, like I said, you know, children are so passionate and they're so important in our lives. And you know, I notice it with my 4 children. You know, they know more about social networking than I ever will. So, you know, it's important. You know, they're on Google every single day, you know, and that's what they do to solve problems. They go on Google.
They Google
so
it.
they, you know, children are so important for the future, and that's what I'll be putting across in many different ways.
And we hope to be able to deliver with David the views of children around the world. We've launched, and if you are in the sandbox, stop by the UNICEF booth, something called You Report. You know, 50% of the kids, even in the most remote areas, have access to a basic cell phone through which we can do text messaging. We've used it as response when, you know, in the Ebola crisis, where we texted out messages to kids about where to go for help, what to look for as symptoms of the disease. But we use it more often to collect information from children about services in real time, so that we're not waiting 2 years till something gets evaluated and then going back and making some changes. We're able to shift on a dime. And that's a program we hope to take out around the world, but we also hope to collect their views for David to take to the UN in September.
Carol, you're very interested in, I mean, obviously a lot of people in the audience here are interested in technology, involved in technology. You're interested in the role that technology can be used in for good in terms of UNICEF. I mean, so what kind of information are you looking for our audience later on?
Well, we are definitely trying to, and we were talking about this, a few of us over lunch today, to change the paradigm from should you allow your child access to tech, or instead to a parent saying, how do I have my child's use of tech be tech for good? And so You Report is one example of that. Another is the little item I'm wearing on my wrist. It's a kid power band. We're giving kids in America, 1 in 4 are underactive, while 1 in 4 children around the world are starving to death. They're severely malnourished. So we're challenging America's children right now to get active, to wear a band, to meet a minimum number of steps. For every 2,500 steps they reach, they get a kid PowerPoint, and it vibrates, and it lights up, and it does all these things. For every 5 points, a sachet of micronutrients is delivered to a child overseas. So the motivation to the American child at the moment to get healthy is that he or she is saving a life. So that's one example of tech for good. And it is our goal to come up with a significantly larger pool of products and services of tech for good. And that's why I'm here today, because you are the wealth of ideas and thought leaders that can help us figure all that out.
And David's just joined Instagram as well, so I'm sure you'll be making use of his Instagram account.
Absolutely.
How many followers have you got now?
Well, I can say it because my son's not here. He's very offended that I'm above him now. For many years, I was only part of Facebook, but on my 40th birthday, I decided to join Instagram. And I think I'm on 5.7 now, so very happy about that. But a bit of pressure as well, because I keep needing to post pictures. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, for those of us on Instagram, we enjoyed the pictures of your 40th birthday party. Thanks for the invite. Talk to us a bit about your children, because obviously they use a lot of social media, and they'll be very aware of what you're doing, not just obviously through talking to you, but through seeing it through various different social media outlets. How involved are they in what you're doing, and how interested are they? How much do you want to involve them in this, as you call it, the Seven Fund is going to be your legacy?
Yeah. Well, obviously, over the years, my eldest is 16 and my youngest is 4. So they've seen me go away playing for the last 16 years, especially Brooklyn. So every time I've gone away, he's understood that I've gone away to, Dad's going away to play a game. But now, I've retired 2 years ago, so their first question when I'm packing a bag is, why are you going away this time? And obviously, when I came back from the Philippines, I sat them all down. I actually told them why I'm going in the first place. I sat them all down and they said, can we see some pictures? So I was showing them pictures of the family that I just spoke about. And they said, how can we get involved? And that was my 10-year-old. He was 8 or 9 at the time. And he said, how can I get involved? What can I do? And that's the great thing about going into the field. I come home, I tell my children exactly what I've been doing, and like I said, even my 8-year-old, 9-year-old at the time turned around to me and said, okay, how can I get involved? How can I raise money for this family? So I obviously said to them, it's not just about this one family, it's about an organisation. So my son, my middle son, ran in the children's marathon. He qualified to run in the children's marathon a few weeks ago. And his first question to me was, can I put the Seven Fund on my arm? Can I raise money? So he sent me round with loads of leaflets. So I went into the office, went knocking on doors, and he raised about £15,000 for UNICEF. So I was very proud of that. But I think what it showed me is, my children listen to me.
Good.
My wife doesn't sometimes, actually most of the time. But they listen, and children are like sponges. As soon as you tell them some information, it soaks right in, and they come back with questions. And the great thing about children, they're honest. So my children wanted to get involved in that. They're very proud of what I've done throughout my career. They're very proud that their dad's helping children around the world. And my oldest son is 16, so at some point he's going to be coming on trips with me as well. So,
Gareth, that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just about helping children that need it globally, but it's also about inspiring the next generation to continue the work that their dads and their mums are doing right now.
Absolutely. I've brought all 3 of my sons to the field at various points. They hung bed nets in Africa, and they did a polio campaign with me and a tetanus campaign, and they have been all up and down the Amazon as well. But I think there's a couple things. I've had the privilege to do work as part of my job with UNICEF in now 30 countries. And there are 3 things that have been the same in every country. The first, actually, why David is such a great ambassador is that wherever there are kids, there's some kind of ball. I really don't know what it is about mankind, but there's something in us that's innate that we will have to kick a ball, because every country has one. And the second is that in every single country, my lap is not my property. If you sit on the ground long enough, anywhere in the world, a child, if not multiple children, will come and sit on you. But the third thing is somewhat more serious, is that as parents, as grannies, as aunties, whatever, we all want the same things for our kids. You know, we want them to be safe, and we want them to be healthy, and we want them to eat a warm meal every night and go to bed underneath a warm blanket. And we want them to dream these really big dreams. And we want to be part of making that happen. And that's not defined by geography and borders or economics. That's defined by the fact that we are the grown-ups and these are children. And we might define that success differently. You know, I say to my kids, go to Harvard B School, make a lot of money, support your mom. And the woman in Sierra Leone may say, I really hope my child gets to own a goat. But we all know that we want them to have the life that's better than our own. And if it's not okay for my child not to have it, it's not okay for your child not to have it. And we really have to get the world to wake up and hear 17,000 kids are dying tonight. 17,000 moms will not kiss that child good morning tomorrow. And until we accept that and do something about it, it is just not okay.
Okay, well, before we get to the... well, before we give you the opportunity to ask David and Carol some questions, we're going to get to the business end of our talk, David, because we're not here, you know, just to talk about this. We're here to do something, aren't we?
Yes.
I noticed you perusing through the guest list in the brochure earlier on to check out who was in the room. Parents in this room, a lot of high-profile, influential people. What can they do to help today?
I think, you know, what we've just spoke about for the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes, which has gone very quick, by the way. I'm watching the clock run down. I'm waiting for the music to start.
We'll ask for extra time.
It's about telling you guys exactly what we are doing, exactly what we need to happen for not just the 7 Fund, for UNICEF, and you guys can do that globally. You know, we're doing it at the moment, and we're trying our hardest to raise funds. We're trying our hardest to shine a light on all different kinds of situations and areas. But you guys are so powerful and influential and intelligent in so many different ways. I just wanted to come here and actually get through this without messing up, first off, and then just to make you aware of exactly what the 7 Fund is.
Because I should just point out that none of the funds for this are actually coming from UNICEF. All the fundraising is on those shoulders of yours.
Yes.
You've started from scratch.
Yeah. It's a bold idea. You know, when we came up with it, someone turned around to me and said, "Do you really want to have this responsibility?" And I didn't even question it, because I know my capabilities. I know what I can achieve. I'm going to need quite a bit of help along the way, which is one of the reasons why I'm sat here. But, you know, I know how passionate I am about being successful, and I know that I can make a difference. And with sitting here and explaining to you guys exactly what we are doing, hopefully, you know, that gives you the opportunity to actually listen and want to help us and want to help UNICEF and want to help children around the world. And I think that's hopefully what we're going to achieve today.
So, Carol, for people sitting in this room going, "Oh, I'm not sure how I could help," what kind of things are you after? Are you after money? Are you after contacts? Are you after spreading awareness? There are so many different types of people in here from different businesses and different backgrounds, even if they're thinking they can't help.
So it's D, all of the above. But really, you can help in many ways. And first and foremost, obviously, is fundraising, because it does take dollars to make this happen. But we are interested in your ideas. We're interested in your expertise, what you think you may have to offer. And we are really interested in your voice. You each have a network to use that voice, to pay attention to the issues for children, to use it in the way that you vote, in the politics that you choose, that our world leaders should be putting children on their platforms. It should be a moment of discussion. It's not happening, and we need to start to make this important. So there are many ways you can get involved with us. UNICEF.org, there's a whole volunteer section. You can check that out too.
Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. David Beckham and Carol Stern from UNICEF.
Thank you.